Think knights were rolling in gold and living large in fancy castles? Think again. Most medieval knights were basically the trust fund kids who blew their inheritance. They were drowning in debt, pawning their armor, and desperately hunting for medieval side hustles. Hey, forget everything Hollywood taught you about knights. Those shiny heroes in movies with perfect hair and spotless armor? Total fantasy. Real medieval knights were more like that friend who keeps borrowing money and never pays it back. Their armor was often rusty, dented, and probably bought second-hand. And those epic sword fights you see in movies. In reality, knights spent way more time figuring out how to pay their bills than swinging swords. They weren't gracefully dancing around in combat. They were sweaty, scared guys in metal cans, desperately trying not to die while wearing the medieval equivalent of a car's worth of metal. Hollywood made knights look like superheroes, but they were just regular people with regular problems, like trying to afford their next meal while maintaining a really expensive horse. Let's talk about how much a knight's armor actually cost. Ready for this? A complete suit of plate armor would set you back about the same as a modern Ferrari. We're talking the equivalent of $200,000. That's right, medieval knights were walking around in supercars made of metal. The average knight needed a small fortune just to gear up. Most of them had to save for years, borrow money, or inherit their armor from relatives. And here's the kicker. Armor wasn't a one-time purchase. It needed constant maintenance, repairs, and replacements. Imagine paying Ferrari prices for something that could get dented, rusty, or completely wrecked in your first battle. No wonder these guys were always broke. Think a horse was just a one-time purchase? Ha! These weren't your average farm horses. Knights needed specially bred war horses that cost as much as a modern luxury car. And that's just the beginning. These four-legged tanks ate like champions, munching through massive amounts of premium grain and hay every day. You had to hire special handlers, pay for fancy horseshoes, and don't even get me started on the vet bills. Plus, horses had this annoying habit of dying in battle or from disease, forcing knights to buy new ones. It's like leasing a Porsche that could drop dead at any moment. No wonder knights were always looking for tournaments to win. They needed the prize money just to keep their horses fed. Medieval knights were basically walking credit disasters. These guys were taking loans from anyone who'd give them money, merchants, monasteries, even their own squires. And the interest rates? They'd make modern credit card companies blush. Knights had to maintain a certain lifestyle. Fancy clothes, servants, feasts, all while being terrible at budgeting. They'd show up to tournaments looking fabulous but owing money to half the kingdom. Some knights even pawned their armor to pay off debts, then borrowed more money to buy it back. It was a medieval version of living paycheck to paycheck, except the paycheck was whatever they could win in tournaments or grab in warfare. Many knights ended up in debt prisons or had to sell their lands just to stay afloat. Medieval tournaments weren't the glamorous sports events you might imagine. They were more like high-stakes poker games where knights bet everything they owned. These guys would travel hundreds of miles, spending a fortune just to show up, all for a shot at the prize money. But here's the crazy part. Most knights lost way more than they won. They'd wreck their expensive armor, injure their pricey horses, and sometimes even get themselves killed. And if you think modern sports betting is wild, medieval knights would literally bet their armor, horses, and even their weapons on tournament outcomes. I'm talking about guys losing their entire kit in a single afternoon. Some desperate knights turned into tournament chasers, bouncing from event to event, hoping for that big win that never came. You'd be shocked how many knights ended up at medieval pawn shops. Take Sir John de Harsick. This guy pawned his fancy sword and armor 3 times in 1 year. He'd hock his gear to pay for food, then scramble to buy it back before the next battle. There was even a whole industry of armor lending that popped up, like a medieval version of rent-a-center. Knights would leave their helmets as collateral, hoping to win enough money to get them back. Some poor knights got stuck in an endless cycle, pawning their gear to enter tournaments, then needing to win those same tournaments to get their stuff back. Talk about a risky business model. You won't believe the crazy side jobs medieval knights took to make ends meet. Some became professional tournament fighters, basically medieval UFC fighters. traveling from town to town looking for prize money. Others turned into medieval security guards, hiring themselves out to protect merchant caravans. The really desperate ones, they became medieval debt collectors, using their scary reputation to convince people to pay up. Some knights even started small businesses on the side, running taverns, breeding horses, or becoming traveling merchants themselves. My favorite has to be the knights who became professional jousting instructors, teaching rich merchants' kids how to look cool on horseback. It's like finding out your local gym trainer used to be a medieval warrior. So you owned a bunch of land as a knight. You must have been rolling in cash, right? Wrong. Land ownership in medieval times was like having a money-eating monster. First off, you had to pay taxes to your lord, and these weren't your simple property taxes. We're talking mandatory military service, providing soldiers, and paying for fancy feasts. Plus, bad harvests could wipe out your income faster than a jousting accident. Your peasants couldn't pay rent. Tough luck. You still owed your lord. And don't forget about maintaining everything, fixing buildings, replacing tools, and keeping those pesky peasants happy enough not to revolt. Many knights ended up selling pieces of their land just to keep the rest running. When medieval knights went broke, things got messy real fast. Unlike today's neat and tidy bankruptcy courts, medieval debt collectors were more hands-on. Knights could end up in a debtor's prison. Imagine a tough warrior stuck in a cell because they couldn't pay for last year's horse feed. Some clever knights would claim sanctuary in churches, hiding out like medieval fugitives. Others just disappeared in the night, becoming wandering sellswords or joining the crusades to escape their creditors. The really unlucky ones. Their castles and lands got seized, turning noble warriors into homeless couch surfers of the Middle Ages. Even their precious family crests could end up reversed on public display, medieval times version of a credit score nightmare. Let me tell you about Sir John Fastolf. Yeah, the guy who inspired Shakespeare's Falstaff. He started as a super successful knight, got crazy rich from the 100 Years' War, and owned half of Norfolk. But talk about a plot twist, he died practically broke. Then there's William Marshall, called the greatest knight who ever lived. Started with nothing, rose to become the royal babysitter. Literally, he protected kid kings. But spent so much keeping up appearances that his kids inherited a mountain of debt. And don't forget Jean de Carouge. Won the last judicial duel in France, became super famous but died penniless after blowing all his money on fancy tournaments and political schemes. Thanks for joining me on this wild ride through medieval money problems. Who knew knights were such financial disasters? Hit that like button if you learned something new, subscribe for more historical myth-busting, and share this with your friend who's bad with money.